John McWhorter, why don't you pose a question to Khin Mai Aung, who is an opponent of the motion?
Khin, I would just ask you this. If, when there are racial preference policies, at least in universities, one unpleasant byproduct can be a sense among a certain group that a certain level of performance is just the highest that one does because that's just ethnically authentic. This is something that I saw when I taught at UC Berkeley. A very smart young woman during the ban on racial preferences told me that she was an undergraduate working in the recruiting office, was discouraging black applicants from coming to UC Berkeley if they made really high SAT scores and had really good grades. And I asked her why, and she said, in all seriousness, we're afraid that black students who perform at that high a level aren't going to have a social commitment to the black community at Berkeley. In other words, high achievers are not really black. How would you respond to that in terms of your support for racial preference policies?
I'm sorry, could you clarify the question? There was a long
how would you respond to the point that if standards are lowered for a particular group over a long period of time, after a while that may be the best that that group ever does because they've never been asked to do better?
Well, first of all, standards are not lowered. Diversity is a genuine benefit that occurs at an institution, both for the beneficiary and for other students at that institution. Secondly, beneficiaries of affirmative action are qualified. Students with very low test scores are never going to get it unless they happen to be legacies or children of donors. All beneficiaries of affirmative action have test scores and other criteria where they are able to succeed, and they do succeed. In this 1998 study by the two presidents of the university that Kim Crenshaw mentioned, the Shape of the River, it found that black students at the most prestigious institutions actually graduated at a higher rate than black students at less selective institutions. They had very similar career arcs once they graduated. They had the same rate of getting advanced degrees, and they were actually more likely than whites to get advanced degrees in law, medicine, and business. So I would say that they are qualified and they are succeeding.
And your question now, Khin Mai Aung, you opposed the motion, put a question to Terence Pell, who argues in favor of it.
All right, I too am trying to decide between two questions. So the question that I'm going to ask, actually, it's not related to your particular comments today, but I understand that the organization that you work for, the Center for Individual Rights, has a position that civil rights laws should not apply to the private sector. And so I'm wondering, is that what, if you'd like to explain that position? I mean, if we were back in the 60s when we had black students trying to be served at lunch counters in the South, would you be standing behind the students, or would you be standing behind the diners?
Terence Pell.
Yes, well, the simple answer is that's not our position, and it never has been our position. We routinely rely on these civil rights laws like Section 1981 and Title VI in our lawsuits. Those laws are primarily directed towards discrimination by private entities and private individuals. So our organization not only is not attacking those laws, we're using those laws, and we fully support the use of those laws in the various investigative agencies to go after identifiable acts of discrimination by individuals and private entities. So the premise of your question is false.
I take it I can't respond to that.
You can. Well, there are 20 seconds left. I think you'll be able to get to it a little bit later, perhaps.
Well, I was just going to say,
question from the audience.
My understanding is it was on your website in 2004.
That's false.
That is false. No. In any case, Terence Pell, it's now your opportunity to put a question to Kim Crenshaw.
Kimberlé, if it turned out, if the evidence developed that race preferences or preferential policies turn out to pose barriers to minority success, similar to the barriers you identified in your talk, would you reconsider your support for them?
I would certainly reconsider the actual form at which affirmative action takes place. However, I think that most affirmative action programs across the country actually try to attenuate themselves to the actual conditions. So you all are talking about affirmative action, racial preferences as though they are one program, they actually function in one kind of way. When in fact, there are hundreds of affirmative action programs, ranging from affirmative action in admissions, ranging from outreach programs, development programs, information programs.
30 seconds.
All of these forms of affirmative action have been shown to be effective for the particular obstacles that they are meant to overcome. The issue that I see is that for the most part, when we see various failures to perform, we tend to focus on the individuals rather than saying this is a wake-up call to our institutions. Our institutions know how to integrate equally. Do they know how to educate equally? That's the question that is raised.
Kimberlé Crenshaw, it's your turn to put a question to Joseph Phillips.
So, Joseph, I want to clarify what I think is a confusion, particularly in Colin Powell's position, but I also see it as a confusion that I've heard a lot coming from the other side on Martin Luther King about what is affirmative action and what is a preference. Is it your understanding that Colin Powell does not support affirmative action, to put it more specifically, that he believes that promotions in the armed forces should be absolutely colorblind? Because that is decidedly not what he says.
Joseph Phillips.
It's my position that affirmative action in the form of racial non-discrimination is a good thing. It's good for America. That's what Colin Powell says. Racial preferences are not a good thing, and I don't believe that that's what Colin Powell says.
So are you saying affirmative action is a racial preference, and Colin Powell agrees with you on that?
I said in
Okay.
my...
That's all.
We're down to a factual question. When Powell spoke at the 96th Republican Convention, he didn't defend affirmative action in that speech?
You're asking me to go back.
But
you know, you take one speech that someone made, and they may have said other things at other times during other conversations. So I don't know what he said during that particular speech.
It's in his book. It's in his book.
Okay.
And I think that I accurately reflected his sentiments.
The only point is, if you're going to use people to support your position, you should be actually clear that that's their position.
End
Wait a minute,
of
I haven't
panelist
heard from
question
you
time.
exactly
End of
what he
panelist
said. I
question
heard you
time.
tell me that I
Joseph.
was wrong. I didn't hear the quote.
Read the book.
Well,
I did read the book.
all right,
Do you have the quote, or are you just yelling out from the audience?
The quote can be found at www.aapf.org.
In other words, you don't have the quote.
About
You're just
affirmative
free
action.
to say I'm wrong without having the
Enough
quote.
on Colin Powell's book.
Go read it.